Good morning and welcome to Ridge Church. My name is Krista and I'm your pre-service host this morning. And in these pre-service times, we have been having conversation with people about the legacy here at our church, just around their story and what's gone before. And we often say that we stand on the shoulders of people of great faith that have gone before us. And so we really want to take this time to honor those people, to talk about their stories, and to really highlight the people that have mentored them and chatted with them and done life with them. And so this morning, I have another guest with me, and I'm going to ask him to introduce himself.
Good morning, Krista.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Good.
My name is James Zielinski. I have been a part of Ridge Church, formerly Maple Ridge Baptist Church, for what was the analogy you used? That I was born in a pew?
Yes.
Is that how it works?
Yes.
Yeah. So I've been here for pretty much most of my life, and moved in and out as I, got on with life and got married and built a career and different things like that. And I'm thrilled to be here to talk a little bit about legacy.
That's so exciting. Yeah, and specifically, that would have been around 1969, yes?
Well, thank you for dating me.
Yeah,
That's fantastic. Yes. I am 51, if anybody wants to know. So my family was here, and so I was basically born into the church. My earliest memory, and it's not really even my earliest memory, but the earliest known visual record of me being in the church is a picture that Joan Newton gave me sitting on my mother's lap in 1972 at the Women's Christmas dinner.
Yeah. And so would it have been that early or a little bit later that you would have accepted Jesus into your heart or into your life?
I gave my life to Christ in 1977.
Yes.
So it was a little bit later. So I would have been about 8 years old. I remember it distinctly. It was at summer camp.
Really?
Then like many other kids, I made the decision to follow Christ and rededicated my life when I was a young adult.
Yeah, all right.
It was at that point where you needed to make the decision as to whether or not the faith is yours or is it just simply the faith of your parents.
Yes.
And when I was about 19 years old, actually right before I joined the Navy, I made the decision to follow Christ as an adult.
As an adult, Now, all these years later, not that many years for you.
Thank you.
Yes. Was it worth it? Like, is it worth it to have followed after Jesus?
Oh, absolutely. It's funny. I was thinking about that question just in kind of thinking through this conversation. And the thing that really stuck out to me or stuck out in my mind was this idea that Christian faith gives you a cogent worldview. And in this world in which we live, where every wave comes across and things are changing so quickly, Christ is this anchor point. They're on my socks.
Yes.
Christ is this anchor point, this constant.
Right.
And so you can have a worldview that makes sense in the midst of all the craziness that goes on around about you. You have hope, you have, and you can give that reason that Peter talks about, you can give that reason for the hope that lies within you based on this amazing faith, this gift of faith that we've been given.
And such a firm foundation, right?
Absolutely.
When everything, especially right now, is just changing so frequently and you don't know where you stand, that's a beautiful picture.
It's just a solid anchor.
Yeah, I love that. Very good. So thank you for that. Being a part of this church, and I know you were on staff here as well, but in your coming from it from your point of view, what has been like the most impactful thing that the church has been a part of for our city? So when we think of Maple Ridge and Pitt Meadows and how, the church in some ways has really sought to impact our city, what were some of those things that you saw?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there's so many different things over the years. I'm sure that others have talked about the impact of Daily Vacation Bible School.
Yes.
And I remember, I heard Larry talking earlier, and I'm thinking about Auntie June and what she did with Vacation Bible School. And it was amazing for me to have had the opportunity to be involved in that. As a young adult, leading and engaging with the kids, and what Pastor Bowie did with Summer Day Camp
Right.
So those were some things specifically on what we were doing with kids. The Singing Christmas Tree was very impactful in the community for many, many years. I just remember the place being packed out, and actually I remember singing in it.
Did you?
Yeah,
so good.
Yeah, as a young man. So that was also just an amazing thing. But when we built this building that we're in now, one of the things that we were able to do was serve the community by being a central gathering place. I remember years ago, I think it was in the year 2000, I could be wrong on my dates, Greg Moore passed away.
I remember that.
And we hosted the funeral here, and it was, just national media attention. But we were the only place in the city of Maple Ridge that could host something of that size.
Right.
And being able to serve the community in that way, and over the years when I was on pastoral staff here, just opening up our church to the community for weddings and funerals and events, just to give people the opportunity to come in and show the love of Jesus to them in tangible and practical ways.
Right.
We started Petals Ministry, Heather Chevrier, and what she did with that amazing ministry to reach out to the women in the community. There's so many different things. And I would always say it's never something that the church did. It's always something that the people in the church did.
Yes.
The church is a building in many ways, but it's made up of people. And what people do to show the love of Jesus in tangible ways, either through the building itself and leveraging the building, this amazing gift that we have, or just in their own special way, volunteering in the community, volunteering at the food bank, volunteering at the Salvation Army, volunteering in all these different ways, just to give back to the community and live out their faith in a practical and a tangible way. There's so many different things like that you could point to, but they're always amazing to me.
It's interesting because what you're talking about is a community of people sort of working together, right? Like I don't see that picture of what you're speaking of as one person kind of out doing this thing solo. It's typically people together, like-minded or gifted similarly, to work together. And so when I think of that, I'm wondering for you specifically, who were those people that either mentored you or worked alongside you that you think of specifically that would have propelled you forward in like showing love to other people or showing love to the city or even to just your fellow believer? Like, what did that look like?
Yeah, and that's a great question. It's because I've had the privilege of being a part of this church for so many years. There's been so many different people and in different seasons of my life to be engaged. I think, most formatively as a teenager, so part of the youth group, and this was back in the days, Dan Steenson will probably want to blow his brains out when I talk about this, but this was youth ministry back in the day where it was Wednesday night Bible study and Friday night gym night. Like that was the extent.
I feel like he'd be all over the gym thing.
That was the extent of what we had for youth ministry, and that was also back in the days before you had professional youth pastors, right? So they didn't exist, and Heinz Volkman just poured his heart and soul into youth in this church. And Wes Robinson was our choir leader. Carrie Davison was the coach of our church softball team. Wow. And so you look at those three guys that are all still part of the church today. Right. And they just spoke into an entire generation of people my age or in and around my age and younger than me, just to raise them up to know what it looks like to follow Jesus as a young man. Yeah. When I was here on staff, I was very blessed again to have an amazing board. Jerome Penner, Dan Robinson, Chris Luke, and others who just took the time to take a young pastor and say, hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? Sure. Art Birch was the senior pastor here when I started here. Don Schuling came on board, and the amount of things that I learned from those guys is just unbelievable. How patient they were, how gracious they were to coach and train and mentor. And have you thought about this? And what about that? So you try it this way. And so very, very blessed, and all those things that have shaped me into the man that I am today.
And it seems like it's from genuine relationship and friendship, right? Like I think of the fact that you're still friends with Heinz Volkman, who would have been your youth leader, and Wes Robinson and Carrie Davison, right? Like those people that genuinely prayed for you and actually wanted to be like somebody in your life that you would do lifelong things together, just life together, right?
Absolutely.
And same with your board guys.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, Heinz Volkman is the reason how I ended up on staff
Right.
here. I had left Maple Ridge and had joined the Navy.
Right.
And so I was gone. I was in the Navy in Victoria, and then had gone to work in business and was a banker. And but Diane and I, and it's a long story, but Diane and I had sensed that God was calling us to something different, and so I had beetled off to seminary and was in Winnipeg, actually, in seminary. And we thought that was going to be the end of it, that we were going to be there and, and we would serve there. Well, Heinz Volkman called me. I mean, you don't want to exaggerate, but literally Heinz called me every month for about a year and said, hey, Maple Ridge Baptist Church is looking for somebody with a skill set like yours, somebody who has an administrative skill set but a heart for pastoral ministry.
Right.
Sorry, Heinz, I'm not interested. Called me the next month, literally he called me every month for a year.
Yeah.
And finally we answered that call and said, maybe God's trying to tell us something. I'm not so smart on those types of things. And we ended up moving back here and served in the church for 10 years. Heinz and I are still friends. Jerome, Dan Robinson, Chris Luke, Wes Robinson, Carrie, still friends with all of these guys. It's just, just amazing relationships. And that's the beauty of the foundation, that you have in Christ, that you have that foundation together, and then you just grow together in your relationship, and serving the church together, and being a part of what God is actually trying to do. And again, for me, a big part of it is that's the legacy that we have here as a church, is the relationships, the people that you get to know over so many years, and just see what God does in their lives, and how He's building the church in the midst of our community, and how we serve our community from there.
Now, when you think about our next 100 years, this is similar to this last question, but what do you want people to say, to write about our church? Will we stand another 100 years? What does that picture again sort of look like when we think about, what would they say about us?
Yeah, I mean, again, two things. I would hope and pray that historians, the community, people in the church would say that they knew how to love each other well, and that they knew how to love the community well. But tied into that is this whole idea, if you look at the arc of church life cycles, for lack of a better term, most churches fail after the first generation, between 35 and 50 years. And most of the time they do that because they just simply haven't figured out how to transition the faith to the next generation. And that takes work. It's intentional. So you go back to the people that I talked about, whether it was Heinz, Wes, and Carrie when I was a young man, whether it was Jerome, Dan, Chris Luke, and guys like that, when I was on staff here, figuring out how to engage with young people, intentionally mentor them, love them, care for them, right? Because as we pass on the faith to the next generation, right? We give them they see a vibrant faith in action, right? That's not fake, it's not phony, it's not routine, it's not any of those things. It's vibrant and alive with all of its warts and all of its messes. It's real. But it's real, exactly, it's real. Then they'll realize, and they'll make that, at least I hope, my prayer is that they'll make the same decision I made when I was 19, is that this is real, this is worth giving your life to. It doesn't matter what Jesus calls you to, whether it's vocational ministry or banking or construction or accounting or teaching or whatever it might be, but this is worth giving your life to. And that would be my hope and prayer, is that we would be a church that was known as a group of people that would put up their hand and say, this is worth giving our life to.
Yeah, so good. Thank you for sharing, your heart and your story, and just also sort of pointing to the people in your life that mentored you or spoke into your life and encouraged you. And what I get from you is that, exactly like what you just said, it's worth it. Do it, give your life to Christ, because you're coming before us to tell us that. So thank you for sharing. And any last thoughts?
You know what, it's a privilege to be here. It's so lovely to be able to talk to you and talk to our church family about what is going on here. If I could leave people with anything, is that, it absolutely is worth it. I love the sign that's outside the church these days, that our city might know Jesus, right? And so how do we do that well? The building is an absolutely key component of that, no questions, right? But it's the people that make up the church. And how are we going to love each other and encourage each other and equip each other and build each other up, so that when we go out of here and face a world that is just throwing absolutely everything else, we have that firm foundation and we can go forward from there. So,
Thank you.
Thanks for letting me talk.
Thank you so much. Awesome.
Thank you.